All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horrorheads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And I know if you were listening last week, I said it might be our last episode of the year, but we have found a way to make this work, even with our Wednesdays being taken. And so we are here back this week with a definitive Christmas movie, one that there can be no arguing about. It is horror. It is comedy. It is 80s completely through and through. We're talking Gremlins this week. The movie that brought so many of us into the fold for horror and traumatized so many others. This is a movie that you find a lot of, with people our age, you find a lot of lines in the sand on where people stand with Gremlins and whether or not it was something that they really liked or if it was something where they're like, no, fuck that. Fuck all movies with puppets, specifically because of Gremlins. So we are going to talk this one. We're going to have some fun with this one because, I mean, honestly, Gremlins is just a lot of fun. So in a section that we're calling Let's Get Wet, I mean, let's start it off, right? Let's fire this thing up. Dave, what do you think about Gremlins, man? When did you first see it?
I don't remember when I first saw this. I know that I was very young. This might be the first horror movie I ever watched. And the interesting thing is I don't remember being scared ever with this movie.
Right.
And it very clearly is a monster movie. It is a horror movie. I know that there are some people like today I was talking to someone at work and we were talking about the fact that we were going to do Gremlins on the show today. And he said, but that's not a horror movie. And like half of the teachers' lounge turned around and looked at him. And they were like, what are you talking about? This is clearly a horror movie. And then the other half was like, no, it's a comedy. I'm like, guys, two things can be true. It is both those things. And it is very Christmas.
Yes.
All at the same time. And yet I feel like the movie isn't about Christmas. So it's a movie that I think you can watch at any point of time in the year and really enjoy this movie. I kind of feel that way about Black Christmas too. Black Christmas is a movie that I watch every Christmas season, but in the past I have sometimes watched it in spring and summer, just because I think that it transcends the holiday.
Right.
So for me, this is one of those movies. It came out in '84. I was born in '87. So I don't know a world without Gremlins.
Right.
And by the time Gremlins 2 came around, I think that although I was young, I was aware of the Gremlins mania that took over, because it's kind of difficult, like if you weren't around for it, to understand like how crazy the entire world, like I feel like fandoms, the way that they exist today, where you have like your Marvel fans and you have your Harry Potter fans and Star Wars fans, there was some of that back in the 80s and the 90s, but
absolutely
mostly like if something was a blockbuster, like everyone was into it.
Yeah.
Everyone knew about it. So it wasn't like the Harry Potter fans got really excited about a new Harry Potter release, and then the rest of the world was like, oh yeah, I guess there's a new Harry Potter movie. It was like literally the entire world talked about it, like Batman. Like everyone talked about Batman, So there was no way that you can get wrapped up in it. And even as a kid, I remember thinking Gremlins 2 was okay. It was fun. But there's something magical about the first Gremlins movie. and it's a movie that I kept coming back to year after year. This was one that at Blockbuster I rented all the time. I don't think I ever owned it on VHS, unfortunately, because I've got a box of VHS tapes and I know it's not in there.
Right.
But it was one of those movies where when I first started collecting Blu-rays and DVDs, it was one of the first ones that I bought. And when I made the jump to digital, it was again something else that I bought. So this is a movie that for me, like I keep coming back to. I love this movie, and I'm trying to find the right time to introduce my son to it because of that awkward conversation with Phoebe Cates and with the whole Santa Claus thing. So I don't want to broach that subject yet, but it's definitely one that I look forward to watching this with my kid. What about you?
So, let me start off with where you ended with watching it with your kids. I actually watched this last Christmas with my daughter who was about to turn 12 at the time and my son who was 5. And like it had been a while since I'd seen it. And it got to that part and she started talking. I was like, "Ah, shit." And I just fast forwarded. And then when they asked why, I was like, "Oh, there's a cuss word in there." Like, but you guys don't need to hear that part. And I just like zipped past that one scene. But I had forgotten that it was in there. And so it's almost like the first time I watched Beetlejuice with them. I like right as he kicks the tree, I was like, "Oh no!" And like I had to find the remote.
Nice fucking model.
Nice fucking model. And then he honks his dick. I was like, "Oh." So they were used to me doing that on occasion and being like, the 80s were a different time, like, yes, it's rated PG, but so I have done that. Now, Gremlins for me actually started with Gremlins the New Batch, which came out in 90.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think I saw it in 90. I think it was like 91, 92. A friend of mine got it, rented it, and we watched it. And I had no idea. Like, I didn't know any of the lore of Gremlins. I didn't know what Gizmo was. I didn't know any of it. I just watched it and I was like, this is fun. It's a bunch of monsters, right? That one turns into a spider. He lights the whiteout on fire. Like it. Gremlins to Gremlins 2.
And that one's a hooker.
Yeah, exactly. Gremlins 2 makes a very like aliens like jump in subject
generous.
matter. Yeah. But so and then it was years and years and years, decades later that I finally was like, you know what? I've never actually seen Gremlins. I've only seen Gremlins 2. So I'm 40 now, and it was probably in the past 20 something years that I actually watched Gremlins for the first time. When somebody was like, "Oh no, like it's a Christmas movie and you got to do the whole thing." And so we like watched it and I was like, "Okay, this is incredible. I love it." The thing about this movie, on top of it just being fun, is you can see where while there were millions and millions of dollars in merchandising that were done with it, you never get the feeling that this movie was created specifically for the merchandising angle. It just lends itself to that so perfectly. I mean, you could it's probably you look at Gizmo, you look at Mogwai, and you go, well, there's where Furbies came from. It took them a while, right? But they got there. And so it's interesting to see something where the marketing potential is so high and then kind of go back through and realize that they weren't sure how this was going to do when they released it. So it wasn't something that had this massive merchandising push at first. That came after, when there was this ridiculously positive whiplash of everybody loved this movie. And then it was like, why aren't the shelves full of Gizmos? And so they kind of went back and they did it. And you're right. And then that fandom just kind of caught fire. And it's one, I spent some time today just online. There are still like really active Gremlins fandoms out there. It's really bizarre. Just for a movie, Gremlins 2 was 90, and did they ever do anything else? I think
there was
it, right?
there was actually an HBO Max animated series that came out. I want to say it like 2 or 3 years ago.
Maybe that's what reignited it then.
I didn't see it, but I know that there was a third Gremlins that Joe Dante was trying to get off the ground for years. He apparently was not particularly happy with what was done with Gremlins 2. So yeah, I mean, I can't really blame him. You know, the studio got involved. They're like, hey, there's lots of money we can make here.
Right.
And of course, whenever studios get involved, things only get worse.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, and you would think by this time that like the studio system would be like, no, listen, if Steven Spielberg wants to produce something and Joe Dante wants to direct it, just let them do whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
But I don't know, man. Something happened there, and he was trying to get a third one done, and it I guess turned into that animated show.
And I mean, also just since you mentioned him, you mentioned Joe Dante, but Chris Columbus is the writer for this. Can I just point out how huge his 1984 was to geeks like us history, in the fact that he wrote Gremlins and Goonies that both released in 84. Like, what a fucking stellar ass year for just nerds in general, and especially Chris Columbus, the guy who wrote these things. But so I love this movie. It has become one that I watch. I watch every December. I watch every Christmas season. I always really enjoy it. It's got heart, I think, is one thing that you can really say for this movie that sometimes isn't something that we give. Not necessarily that we don't give movies that we do on this podcast for. It's just, it's not the type of movies that we do, right? But this movie has got, it's feel good. This is a fun movie. It's gorgeous. I mean, God, the puppetry and the animatronics, or whatever you want to call it, that's involved in this movie are just so out of this world that they still look amazing. And it's one it's just not easily forgotten, because everything that happens in this movie is memorable. Everything. Anybody who's ever seen a Gremlins movie can give you a basic rundown of kind of how Gremlins and Mogwai work.
Right. Even if they've never seen it.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It did kind of transcend all of that.
And speaking of how the Mogwais work, is it Mogwais or Mogwai? Is it like Jedi, where it's like the plural is the singular?
One Mogwai, I think. Two Mogwai. I'm going no S.
I would say no S too. So we have reached a consensus, and it is now official. So in a section we're going to call "There's 3 Rules." The story here is surprisingly simple. I think that there's a far-fetched premise. It is fantastical, even. It's almost like this takes place in an alternate dimension where something like this is possible, but in classic Christmas fashion. So thinking like It's a Wonderful Life. There's just like this one element of fantasy in this world that is extremely realistic, and that's enough for you to say like, oh, well, it's Christmas magic, So how does this, the premise and then the subsequent plot, work for you, Daniel?
Let me start off by saying the world would be a better place if mysterious men of Asian descent still ran shady ass shops full of stuff that you couldn't find anywhere, and like that, if that were more commonplace in the world.
I look for them everywhere I go. Those shops, wherever I travel, I always stop at the airport. I'm like, can you please point me to your nearest mysterious Asian man?
Yes, it would be wonderful if he was blind in one eye and had long white hair. Just the one. Yeah. So I love that it's so simple. There are so many times when we're like, well, the movie, kind of established this as a baseline, and then it goes here and then it goes there. I mean, he hits you with, 3 rules. Keep them away from bright light. Don't get them wet. And don't feed them after midnight. You follow those 3 things, and the Mogwai and you will have a wonderful life. And so it lays it out there. keeps it real simple. And then it's like, and then you immediately go, okay, well, there's 3 rules that are so simple. Let's see how they fuck these up. I mean, that's that
Right.
even if this is your very first time, you're looking at this movie just like, all right, how is Billy going to screw this up? Turns out Billy doesn't screw it up. Corey Feldman screws it up initially.
Of
So,
course.
because of fucking course he does. Sidebar. Corey Feldman is opening for Limp Bizkit on their tour that's happening here soon. And I can't mentally process that information.
I feel like it works. Like, what's more metal than Tommy Jarvis? Which, by the way, we want to talk about massive 1984s. All right, he came out with Friday the 13th Part 4, Goonies, and Gremlins in the same year. I mean, what a fucking year for Corey Feldman.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they take that very simple premise of, how can Billy screw this up? And then how can we then go over the top with it? And what makes the story of Gremlins so good is the astronomical uptick that this thing takes, like once the shit hits the fan. Like everything kind of stays level for a little bit. Gizmo gets wet, you got 5 more, he makes 1 more to give to his science teacher, and you're getting there, and you get this great moment where you're like, okay, they're all dead except for the one. And then it's like, oh no, he found the pool. And now there's enough to take over the city, right? So you've got this great up and down. The pacing of this movie is fantastic. Billy is just this bumbling guy trying to work at the bank and kind of keep his family afloat because his dad is a horrible inventor. Fantastic ideas for a fantastic future, just really not working out for him. But they do so much to give you just enough story here, right? That you're totally invested in Gizmo's safety and Billy saving it and Billy kind of saving the city. And also don't give you so much that you're ever just bogged down with tons of exposition. You don't need it. You just need to kind of get to where the Gremlins start to run amok. And then you see what happens. They lit that powder keg and then they stood back.
I really like this story, and the amount of Christmas spirit that is in this story is something that I've struggled with from time to time. Some years I think, man, this is one of the most Christmassy stories that there is, and then some years I'm like, it's a very tenuous relationship that it has with Christmas. It's just the backdrop. But to me, I see a lot of correlation between this story and It's a Wonderful Life.
Right. I'm interested.
Even with like the Mrs. Deagle character, and the guy that runs the bank, I forget his name, and It's a Wonderful Life. Like that. There's this. It's like small town America, and you have in Billy this character who's like, I don't really mean much to anyone but my family, and discovers how much he means to not just his family, because he means so much more to his family, but how much he means to everyone, including himself. Because I feel like that's something that we see with Judge Reinhold's character very early on, which I wish we had more interactions with him, because I fucking love Judge Reinhold. But we see where he's struggling with like his self-worth, his sense of self-worth. And I think he kind of discovers that like he has value in himself, without, and it's fighting that sort of like capitalist consumerist sort of philosophy that we see kind of espoused a lot in Christmas time, where it's all about the gift giving, and it's all about how nice is this thing that you're buying for someone else, how nice is this thing that you're receiving from another person. It's about discovering the worth in people in ourselves. And
Right.
and I really think the more you kind of digest story, the more Christmassy it becomes, because there's a lot of, tinsel and lights and stuff all over the place, and it's very easy to be Christmas in that way. But if that's your way of thinking about, okay, well, is something Christmas? And I know we're going to get to Christmasosity or Christmosity. I can't remember what
Christmasity,
term
right.
we had. Christmosity. But like, to me, it like this story feels like if you were to put eggnog in your brain and then it gets jumbled around because there's a gremlin chasing you, that's
Right.
exactly what this is. And I think that in classic monster fashion, there's like really good mythology here, which I'm with you. I think that with Gremlins 2, like there's not an exploration of the mythology. There's an expansion of Gremlins, of like the
Exactly.
breadth of what Gremlins can do, and that's great. And I feel like in true Steven Spielberg fashion, they saw that they could market the Gremlins as toys and T-shirts and pajamas and backpacks and lunchboxes and thermoses and pillowcases and bedding and all this stuff. And they were like, yeah, let's do that, because now we have even more of it that we can do. But the actual mythology of like the Mogwai, where the fuck do they actually come from? Like, are they native to Asia? Where in Asia? Like, how did that man find that Mogwai? And how does he know these rules? Like, there's so much undiscovered country here that I would love to see. And I think that that's part of why this movie works so well, is because the rules are established and never broken. And even if certain rules are created only so that they can be used later in the movie, they're used well.
Yeah. I mean, the word Mogwai, right, is Mandarin or Cantonese. Don't hold me to it. It is Chinese for devil, right? So, but that still doesn't necessarily mean they came from China. It could just be what this guy has named it because he knows what can happen if you have a Mogwai. But it is either Mandarin or Cantonese. I forget which. But yeah, it just means devil, which is way super fascinating when you look at Gizmo and realize that he's just constantly being called devil, right? Because he's got this angelic singing voice and just seems like a sweet guy, as and even he doesn't even, it's not even like he gets mad when he gets bright light in his face. He just gets cuter and tries to hide. But yeah, I do agree with what you're saying when you start to look at Gremlins 2 and you're like, okay, this became about creating, because in this one really there's Gizmo and there's Stripe and that's it. The rest of them are kind of interchangeable. Oh, there's the one with the ski mask on, there's the one who puts the 3D glasses on. But 2 became about like, okay, can we have names for them? Can we market this one as a specific something? They became Pokemon in 90, right? Like, can you collect all of them because they all have names and personalities now? One of my favorite things,
call themselves Mogwai also in Pokemon fashion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's what they that's how they talk, because they don't, calling them Gremlins is the development of the old guy with the snowplow, right? Whose name has suddenly escaped me. But he's the one
Dick
who's
Miller.
like,
I don't know.
He's always
Dick Miller to me. Whatever role he's in, he's Dick Miller. And
but he's
spectacular.
He just starts talking about like, oh, well, it is drunk. And he's like, oh, we had gremlins in the machines and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, you go back to Twilight Zone, called the thing on the wing a gremlin, right? So it was, it's interesting that this isn't like the birth of the word gremlin. It just became the perfect word to describe these things. And so I love that. And I do love, my favorite thing about this movie, when you're talking about, is it comedy? Is it horror? It can be both. My favorite thing about this movie is the fact that even though people are actively dying, with the exception of, like the very first couple that attack Billy's mom, all of the chaos and the violence is so Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. It's like, oh, look, I'm messing with the street lights. The cars crash because everything turns green. Or, oh, look, I'm just pulling all this stuff underneath the car. Now the cops don't have brakes. It's all just so childish mischief gone too far. Right.
Mrs. Deagle flying out the window, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, is always going to get like not a chuckle, not a chortle, but like a full-on guffaw.
Yes.
Like I am going to like laugh from my belly.
Yes, and it's like, and it starts as soon as I see him playing with the wires on the chair.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, here it comes. And so and then it's just it's all so ridiculous, but it makes sense for these little things to cause that kind of chaos. And that moment when you kind of get reminded of the fact that that's what they are is when they're all sitting in the theater loving Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And they just want to eat candy and watch cartoons. And sure, maybe they murdered half the town on their way there, but they were just goofing off. Boys will be boys, right? Like that.
Yeah. And I hate that phrase. But
Me too.
I couldn't help. This is the first time I've seen Gremlins since my youngest son gained a personality. Because you've had a couple of kids, this.
Right?
Kids are potatoes until they're people, and then there's like a period where they're like potato people. But like he is, I would say like 90% person now, and only 10% potato. So he is a mogwai that has turned into a gremlin. So I couldn't help but watching this and being like, oh fuck, that's Wes. Because like he never means harm. He just wants to do whatever the fuck comes to his mind at that exact moment. Like
just a walking, talking, intrusive thought.
Yes, that's it. Like, zero impulse control, has no idea that like these intrusive thoughts need to be buried deep inside your mind. That's what these things are.
Yeah, I mean, like that. You've always, it's like you see the stoplights change. You're like, man, it would be bad if they just all turned green at the same time, right? But then you don't actively try to find a way to make it happen.
Yeah,
you just wonder how bad it would be. Yeah, we're adults. We bury those intrusive thoughts deep down. We don't actually suddenly just steer our car into the barrier because we wonder how bad it's gonna be. You just keep driving. You focus on the road. You're like, nope, gotta get where I'm going, right? So, I love that. I love that there are some absolutely gruesome things that happen because of Mogwai, to Mogwai, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, like she puts the one in the juicer, man. Like,
and that's like the very first death in the movie. It's like, holy fuck, you just juiced a monster. And the green blood is splattering everywhere. It's good.
Yeah. And then the one in the microwave, it's just like, okay, sharp left. We're in horror territory now. And so, but then what's amazing about that scene is that's so comedic. And like I said, Looney Tunes. But then you get that scene where it's just Stripes' red eyes in the tree before he just attacks her straight out of the tree. And that is reminiscent of the scene when Chucky first comes to life for the mom, and she's struggling against that whole thing. And that's scary as shit. Or I guess maybe it's not Stripe that does that, because the one who does that gets hit into the fireplace, right? So, but anyway, so they balance everything beautifully in this movie through this wonderful pacing that they have, which I think is something that this movie can never get enough credit for. And so I love the way that it all plays out. You get your one little sweet, soft moment between Phoebe Cates and Billy there. in the middle, and you kind of learn, because there's that great scene where she's like, what is it? Say you hate Arbor Day or George Washington's birthday and nobody bats an eye, but it's like, but she can't understand why nobody, like everybody gets so mad that she doesn't like Christmas. It's just you get that one little sweet scene, and it's like, all right, let's get back to the action. You get a great hero moment from Gizmo. I mean, it really does. It just plays to all those classic things that make for a fun movie.
Yeah.
And so, we keep mentioning names. And so, I mean, let's get into it. Let's talk about these people. So in a category, a section, if you will, that we're calling Kingston Fallsers, let's talk about the people of Kingston Falls. Who stands out for you? Who do you like? Whose performances did you think were stellar? Take me through it.
So just because she's out there, I have to apologize to Phoebe Cates for all the thoughts I've ever had about her. And now that that's done, I'm gonna move on.
Well played.
So there's two characters, because it's very easy to talk about either her or Zach Galligan, because like they're fantastic. They steal the show. Corey Feldman is always great in everything he's in. I am a Corey Feldman fan. I fucking love Feldman. But I feel like we can go on and on about these people, and people often do. But there's two small roles that to me are like really what makes Kingston Falls feel like its own unique magical place. The first, we just mentioned him, is Dick Miller as Murray Futterman. That was the name. It's the Futtermans.
There we go.
Dick Miller is someone who, in every movie I have ever seen him in, he's got a small role and he steals the scene, no matter what it is. And they're not usually very likable characters. They're usually someone who is like kind of a dick, but you've known enough of these kinds of people where you can find the humanity in this character. And I kind of see that in Futterman, where like I know that guy. I work with that guy. I'm related to that guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the magic of that character, is like, is he a racist? Yes. Can you laugh at him? Also, yes. And I think it's okay to laugh at racists for them being a racist, number one, right? And number two, because they can still be funny. And I think that's how he played Futterman as, yes, xenophobic, but also just fucking funny. Because
should have bought a Zenith.
That fucking scene, man, that's the one. I fucking love that scene. Because number one, Zenith TVs are fucking awesome. All right? I had a Zenith. I worked hard for that Zenith. All right. Because I could have bought something else and I didn't. I bought a Zenith. I was in fucking 9th grade, man. I mowed lawns all summer long so that I could buy a Zenith.
Nice.
Anyway, that scene, with hey, what are you doing with the clicker? And then she's like, you have it in your lap. It's to me, there's such a humanity to his character that Mrs. Deagle is devoid of, which is fantastic, because like that's really where you get to see, like, listen, you can be a good person or a bad person, but if you're a person, you're better than this like money hungry grub that's over here. Like, that's not human. You celebrate when she gets thrown out the window.
Yes.
But with the Futtermans, it's sad, because they were just living their lives, and like, he never did anything wrong, really, I guess, that we saw, just again gave into intrusive thoughts. And the second character is the amazing Jonathan Banks as Deputy Brent.
Dude, it's so crazy. When we did oh my God, Wes Craven, George Romero, Creepshow. When we did Creepshow, we talked about the fact that like Lance Hendrickson has just not Lance Hendrickson, that's Pumpkinhead, but that also applies.
Yeah.
But like, you know, we talk about these people who it's like you can go back 40 years and watch movies and they still looked old. And like Jonathan Banks, it's like, oh yeah, that's him. He's still old. He just had hair 40 years ago.
Yeah. And somehow looked older with the hair.
Yes.
Than without the hair. I don't know how he managed to do that.
But I love when they're like, "Are you drunk?" He's like, "No, but you are."
Deputy Brent is exactly the kind of police officer that makes you upset at your municipal police department.
Right.
But is exactly the kind of guy you want to have a beer with.
Okay.
And I feel like the residents of Kingston Falls are riddled with this like duality where it's like you kind of suck, but also like don't people suck?
Yeah.
And these people that suck are the same people that I want to go have a drink with. They're these same people that at the Christmas party I'm gonna hope that they steal my white elephant gift and I steal. It's very, very real, I think, because as cartoonish as these characters are, I find myself saying, oh, this reminds me of this person that I actually know. And this reminds me of this other person that I actually know. It's almost like a real life Springfield. And I know I always throw that out whenever we have like a very colorful cast of characters, because to me, Springfield is like the perfect comedic city.
Right.
But there's still something a little bit more grounded than Springfield here, where it's just, you know, I would not be upset if I lived in Kingston Falls after all this happened, because I don't want to experience the gremlin thing. What about you?
So, you know, you talked about Murray Futterman. I loved Jackie Joseph in the little role she had as his wife, Sheila, just because, you know, we've gotten so much of Murray's an asshole, you know, and it's like but one of those things is like he's an asshole, but he's our asshole, right? You know, because it's like he walks up, your car is frozen up again, piece of shit foreign car. I'm not going to do anything to help you. I'm just going to stand there and talk shit about it.
I'm just going to tell you, oh, you shouldn't have bought that car.
And so we've gotten all of this, and then you find out that he's just got like this sweet older lady wife at home who puts up with this shit. You know, he immediately catches an attitude about the remote. She's like, "Oh, you're sitting on it," and she's back to her, you know, knitting and whatnot. Like it was so funny in that one little scene they had together, just kind of the way that they played off of each other and how she was unlike him in every single way. And you know, it was fun to see that and to kind of you know, just enjoy that moment. It's like, man, you know what, like there must be something to him, right? If this sweet lady is married to him. So she did a great job. I just, man, when I watch this movie, it's like, yes, okay, you know, great job by Phoebe Cates of, you know, being there, you know, right? She did what she needed to do, and she was perfect at it. But you mentioned him earlier, man. I wanted more Judge Reinhold. Like I wanted him as this really brief, you know, like anti-capitalism statement where it's like, well, look at the dickhead that only cares about being a millionaire by the time he's 30, you know, and I would have fired you and you know, like all of that. There was just enough of him, but also I wanted like a little bit more. And really one of the things that makes you love him in that role is just when you watch movies from this run where Judge Reinhold was just kind of in everything, you know, including this reunion between him and Phoebe Cates, because Ridgemont High was 81, 82, right? So that was before
like that.
They were together in this. So, but you always get that reminder of, it's like, I don't know how much breadth this guy has as an actor, but I know that he kind of falls perfectly into everything he's asked to do, even though they're all kind of variations of the same thing, but he was always perfectly cast. And so I would have liked to have seen him a little bit more, but that bit of him that we got, I think it really worked to make Billy seem that much better about the fact that, he made enough money to get by and he still had a great family. And that's what it was all about. And you're talking about the Christmas thing of this, right? You're looking at all these people who all they care about is money. And then you got the guy where it's like, look, my family has a house. I'm living with him. I'm happy. He's Judge Reinhold and the banker lady, Miss Deagle. They're the Ebenezer Scrooge to his Bob Cratchit, right? You can, yeah. There are wonderful life comparisons here, but there's the Christmas Carol element of it here of, all these people that are lording over you and constantly threatening to end your life. They don't know what Christmas is all about. We never see their families. We know that, Miss Deagle apparently lives home alone and is just miserable. And, Judge Reinhold has a bunch of money, but Phoebe Cates don't want to date him. So,
Right.
like you get that great element of it too. So I did like his role was kind of perfect for what he was. Kind of just wanted to maybe see him get some comeuppance. Right. And
Yeah,
so
I wonder if there was more of him in the movie and it just didn't make it off the cutting room floor.
right. And that it's a possibility because it seemed like they were setting him up to, to get his goes around comes around, right? They put him in there, they make him a well-known jerk and all of this. It seems like they were setting him up to maybe get something. So maybe when I say I want some more of him, that's what it is. I wanted to see Judge Reinhold get his. And so, and yes, when you're talking about the character, Zach Galligan, he did great. He was kind of exactly what he needed to be. He was just an average looking dude who ends up getting the girl. He's a great artist. He's so deep and he loves his family and he did all of that really well. And yeah, Corey Feldman, man, can't miss. The 80s Corey Feldman did not miss. Like that's just a fact. That's just an absolute fact is that dude only hit dingers in the 80s. And so it was good, but yeah, like Jonathan Banks, man, seeing him young while still kind of looking as old, if not older, than when he's Mike in
Right.
Breaking Bad was it's so bizarre. And I always forget that it's him until I see him. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's right. Like I always forget he's in this movie until that moment.
Shit, he was also in Beverly Hills Cop with Judge Reinhold.
It has been so long since I've seen Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah,
I was actually thinking I need to rewatch it
Reinhold
soon.
is in it.
Right.
But I had zero recollection of Banks being in Beverly Hills Cop.
I was actually thinking I need to rewatch it here soon because there's a sequel coming out soon. Like there's a new Beverly Hills Cop coming out. So I was like, I need to go back and rewatch those. I haven't seen them in forever.
Now I remember the first two, but I don't remember anything about the third one.
Top of my head, I wouldn't have even told you there was a third one. So I don't know that I've ever seen it.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Seen Beverly Hills Ninja.
You know what? I like that movie. I'm just
I
gonna
love
put it out
that
there.
movie. I love that movie.
I am a Chris Farley fan, and it may not be good, but it is a movie, and it is a movie that makes me laugh.
Yes.
In spite of the fact that it's no good.
Correct.
Which I think says more about me than about the movie. The only characters we haven't talked about, and we do this every time, no one should be surprised, are our little monsters, our gremlins, the Mogwai, right? So you did a little bit of research here. Mogwai is devil in either Cantonese or Mandarin. Something there. What do these creatures do for you? So as far as creature features go, do you think that obviously they've stood the test of time, but
Right.
How do they stack up against some of these other like amazing creatures in the pantheon of creature features?
So, quick question about the rules. Um, do the Mogwai inherently know what time zone they're in? Or are you always supposed to not feed them after midnight, wherever they're from? Also, isn't it always after midnight? Like, at what point does
These,
it become safe to feed your Mogwai again?
Listen, man. These are the thoughts that have haunted me since the very first time I ever saw this movie. Because I remember being like very, very little and turning to my dad and saying, "But the next day is after midnight."
Right.
And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "So you never feed him again?" And he was like, "I don't know, man. Watch the movie." So,
okay, fair. So let's just
Yeah.
assume after midnight till the sun comes up. We'll go somewhere around there, right? No. Okay, so
I figure 6 o'clock is morning.
there we go. Okay, I'll give you
6
that.
o'clock is morning. So from 6 until 11:59, fair game.
There we go. There we
But
go.
that
All right.
6 hour, they have to fast.
Fair. Good. All right. There we go. Problem solved. Put the stamp on it. So the Mogwai are a great lesson in something that we discussed, I guess it was a year and a half ago now, when we did Puppet Master. And it's this idea that you don't have to create the biggest, strongest movie monster if you create a horde of movie monsters. Right?
Yeah.
The thing is, one Mogwai is not the scariest thing ever. Even once it's eaten after midnight and it's gremlin form. We watched Billy's mom take out two of them, and then Billy show up and take out another, right? So one is not that bad. It's just like zombies. One zombie's not a problem. It's hordes and hordes of these things, or one that is extremely devious that can create hordes like we get in Stripe. So I think that there's a fun element to the Mogwai to Gremlins as a movie monster, in the idea of a movie monster that just overwhelms you, that is nothing but intrusive thought. And they think it's just funny. They think killing is so funny, they kill each other over card games.
Right.
And it's funny. Violence is funny. Watch me shoot you.
Now, okay, so here's a question. Now that you brought up that scene, the Mogwai reproduce asexually.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So there's no gender.
There's gender. There's no sex.
Okay, so there's no sex, but there is gender identity, right?
Right.
Because Stripe has a girlfriend.
Yes.
Who is like biologically neither like male nor female.
Right. So yes. While sex does not exist. Yes. While there is no sex involved, the gender identity seems to be a thing for Mogwai. Yeah, because she's got the lipstick and the blonde wig, and she's hanging onto his arm while they're playing cards. And yeah, so I think that yes, there is gender, but no, there is not sex. Right? Like their organs are all the same, but their identity, right, their social in what they are in gender is different. And so but I think, it's obvious that they've stood up, because here we are watching this movie almost 40 years later, right? And we're still enjoying it. They still look good. They're still a lot of fun. And I think that they're the blueprint for, how to successfully do things like Puppet Master and stuff like that.
Critters.
Yeah, Critters. There we go.
Yeah.
Critters is the one I was trying to think of. But Puppet Master kept popping into my head. But yeah, I mean, you see that in the fact that they had all of these spin-offs. these things that obviously kind of happened because we had gremlins are just massive in numbers. So I think that while a group of gremlins isn't going to necessarily make your Mount Rushmore of creature features, I think they're always going to be a fun honorable mention.
I think that Gremlins goes beyond the movie. Like the title of the movie is Gremlins, but I
Right.
feel like what it did for the creature gremlin is it transcended the movie and transcended even the new batch. For me, I feel like Gremlins are like a concept unto themselves. They're
Okay.
that massive, because like you can say the creature from the Black Lagoon, and I think of the movie.
Right.
You can even say something like Frankenstein's monster, and what I think of is the movie Frankenstein. Like if you say the name Frankenstein, I immediately think of the movie. I don't think of the monster, right? Or I
Right.
think of the novel, not the monster. When you say Gremlins, I think of many disassociated mogwai. I
Yeah.
don't immediately jump to the movie Gremlins. I don't immediately jump to Gremlins 2. I never jumped to Gremlins 2. But that's to me how absolutely important of a creature this thing is. And I think a lot of that is there's two people who I think are like really responsible for this. Three. The first is Chris Columbus, because without his initial script, this could very easily have been like a very straight horror movie.
Yeah.
Without the comedy angle, without the Looney Tunes of it all, it would have been it would have been just that. And then there's the special effects artist who for some reason his name escapes me now. But then there's Joe Dante, who is, I think, one of the most important special effects directors that rarely gets spoken about. Because going back to the 70s with Piranha, he's the kind of guy who Roger Corman, when he had a very special effects heavy movie, there were two guys he would go to later in his career. It was either James Cameron or Joe Dante. Like these two guys came up together in the Roger Corman like system. And thanks to all of the work that he did with Corman, he learned how to really create special effects heavy movies without you thinking about like, wait, what's the budget for this movie? Because like
Right.
to me, when I see a special effects like spectacle, one of the things that I'm constantly thinking of is how much did that shot cost? And that's not something I ever think about with this movie. In Gremlins, I'm just thinking like, man, that was really fucking cool.
Right.
And whether it's stop motion or whether it's puppetry, he manages to kind of mesh these two things together in a way that just we don't see anymore. Movies like this, we talked about this when we did Silver Bullet. You don't see movies like this anymore. You don't see movies like Day of the Dead anymore, because even though it's not more cost effective to do computer graphics, it's easier to do computer
Right.
graphics. You'll pay more money to have someone do less work because you're going to get the shot, even though it's not in the camera.
Right.
So to me, the Mogwai work so well because they're beautifully written, they're beautifully created, and beautifully shot. Like it is perfection. It's creature perfection. Like, to go back to the creature from the Black Lagoon, like the creature from the Black Lagoon is the iconic creature that it is for a lot of different reasons, but it goes back to the conception of the thing, the way it was executed, the way it was shot, and you can thank pretty much Riku Browning for all of that. And that's what you have here. It's just more of a collaborative effort. But to me, you have the Gizmo, right? The original Mogwai, which is, I think, just as iconic as Chucky. I think it's just as iconic as Jason Voorhees. It's just as iconic as Michael Myers. In fact, maybe more so, because the audience is greater.
Wider net.
It's a wider net, because my grandmother knows who Gizmo is, and my son, even though he hasn't seen the movie, knows who Gizmo is.
Right.
But my grandmother doesn't know Michael Myers' name. She knows Halloween. She knows it's that dude from Halloween, but she couldn't tell you that his name was Michael Myers. I can almost guarantee you. I mean, maybe she might, but I don't think so.
I'll tell you one thing that was funny to me about the Mogwai that I just learned today while reading it. I, in all of these years, never had any idea that Howie Mandel was Gizmo.
Yeah.
Like, that had just that bit of knowledge had always just kind of flown under my radar. Like, as I'm scrolling through stuff, I was like, wait, like the same Howie Mandel?
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, well, good for him.
Both Peter Cullen and Frank Welker, so Optimus Prime and Megatron, voiced the Mogwai.
Really?
And yeah, and in 1984 they would have been working on Transformers together. So it actually was Optimus Prime and Megatron voicing these guys. It's there's so much to them, and like the cuteness of like the original fuzzy Mogwai, and the the demonic quality to the bad Mogwai is part of why it works so well, because it's still like it manages to be cute and funny, sadistic, and all these things. And I think that they're funny enough where you want to laugh with them, but if you actually stop and think about what they do, it's very much like Looney Tunes, right?
Right.
Stop and think about the violence in these cartoons. Like, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Like, you don't see violence like that in cartoons anymore, because parents complained all the time, right? And I know boomers love to talk about like, kids these days, we watched it and we were fine. Fucking were you? But also, like, their parents were complaining about the fucking Tom and Jerry's. They were complaining about the Wile E. Coyotes and the Roadrunners,
right,
all the fucking time, because it's just so over the top. I feel like it has to be that over the top. It has to be that Looney Tunes, or it doesn't work. So their sense of humor is really like it's integral to their character. I don't think this movie works as a straight horror movie.
No, not at all. And I love you're talking about the character of them. I love that when the others first, spawn out of Gizmo's back, it takes no time at all to look at them and realize, okay, these ones ain't good. Like, like they did such a good job with that puppet creation and the way that they behaved and acted. As soon as you saw them, you immediately knew that those new ones were not good. Like, they weren't just going to hang out and play keyboard with you and stuff like that and cuddle up for nighttime. Like, you knew that right away. And they did such a good job with just little subtle things that they did with their faces, with the way their heads were shaped, that you see Gizmo and you go, oh, and then you see Stripe and all them before they change. You're like, those are monsters, right? Gizmo, sweet baby, these monsters kill it with fire, like that whole thing, right? Like, you get that immediately when you watch. And again, that's just credit to the amazing character design and puppetry that this movie is full of. So we've gotten to it a little bit. But now we need to kind of come back to it. And in a section that we always do when we do these holiday movies, we need to talk about the Christmasity of Gremlins. Now, you said you've had a tenuous relationship with Gremlins and its Christmasity at times. So take us a little bit more into your wonderful life theory and how all of that goes, and how Christmassy do you think this movie is?
So it's been a roller coaster, because there have been periods of my life when I think that Christmas is just the setting, and that
Right.
the movie has very little to do with Christmas. And in fact, the last time that I watched this movie, I thought, you know what? It's not very Christmassy. Like, it's obviously a Christmas movie, but the Christmas spirit, I felt like my favorite Christmas movie of all time is Christmas Vacation. And I feel like the Christmas spirit is alive and well in Christmas Vacation.
Right.
And I felt like it just wasn't here. I didn't see it the last time that I saw this, which was last Christmas. Because I saw it almost like First Blood. And I've made this argument before that, like, you can make an argument that First Blood is a Christmas movie because it takes place during Christmas time. There's Christmas lights twinkling in, store windows. There's Christmas trees. It's cold as fuck as Sylvester Stallone's running away from all these fucking cops, right? Christmas movie, right? He's trying to reunite with friends. That's Christmassy. I didn't see a lot of that there in years past, but upon watching it this last time, there was something about that initial interaction with Billy and Judge Reinhold and Deagle, and all of it just kind of clicked, and I was like, dude, that's fucking It's a Wonderful Life. That's Jimmy Stewart. He's Jimmy Stewart, and while he never like wishes that he was dead, he sees that, like, his value is more than just the guy who works for his family. His value is more than just, like, I pick up the slack because my dad can't. He offers so much more to his mother, to his father, to I always forget her name, but Phoebe Cates's character in this, right? She's just, yes, thank you. Kate, yeah. And just anytime I see her, I'm like, oh, that's Phoebe Cates. I never even think of her as Phoebe or as Cates, just Phoebe Cates. It's all just like one thing. It's like Molly Ringwald. She's always Molly Ringwald.
Nothing but.
Yeah. Speaking of someone else I've had a gigantic crush on all my life. So there's, I think, something very Christmassy about that, about finding your place within your family, within your community, within this, this person that you deeply love, and you hope that they love you back, but you're not really sure where that relationship is going, because clearly they're not in a committed relationship. If Judge Reinhold is coming on to her and asking her to, come over to his place, there's not a committed relationship there. There's maybe a relationship. I don't know what exactly is going on, but they're both living their lives and trying to
hold on. Is that like an established term that I just don't know? Because you just threw it out there like that's like vernacular.
Not that I know of. No.
Okay. Well played, sir. Write it in the Shiver dictionary.
It's the term that I use to describe Tom Buchanan and Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby all the time with my students. I say they don't have a relationship; they have a relationship, and
I like it.
Well, we know how that ends up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but by the end of this movie, they no longer have a relationship. Like, they are like actively working to unite, because they've left the capitalist consumerist like Christmas behind, and they're worried about like saving themselves. And to me, that seems like more Christmassy than almost anything else. Where it's like, it's not about the gifts. It's not about, It's not about like, wearing nice clothes and, giving jewelry, and it's about like being there for someone, helping them through that hard time. It's almost like like an O. Henry story, where it's like, hey, I got you this thing. They're like, oh, great, I can't use it because I sold that thing that was for to get you your thing, and it's like, oh no, we forgot that the greatest gift was each other, and
Thanks,
that's
Mickey Mouse, for
exactly what.
teaching me that story.
Had you never read that before
No.
Once Upon a Christmas?
It's what, like, when I saw it in Once Upon a Christmas, I was like, this seems vaguely familiar.
I have a recollection of a sixth grade English teacher once reading this with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is one, and yeah, I like often when the debate comes up of whether or not something is a Christmas movie, I just love to play devil's advocate, right? Because honestly, I don't give a shit. Watch what makes you happy. Watch it whenever you want, And so, I tend to stand firmly in the camp of Die Hard, not really a Christmas movie. Bah, bah, bah. We don't need to have the argument now. But but I also just, what you just did, that's what I love to hear about people, or like, I like to hear about from people. I love when somebody can give me an argument for something being a Christmas movie other than, well, it takes place on December 24th. All right, cool.
Right.
And so I always kind of egg those arguments on because I want to hear what people have to say. Buddy of mine, Brian Olu, one time made a spectacular case for Rocky IV being a Christmas movie, and about how all the montages, and speaking of Stallone movies, all the montages of him working out in the snow and stuff like that to better himself for his family and for his legacy and all of that, and it just made a spectacular argument. So yeah, sure. To Brian, Rocky IV is a Christmas movie, and dude is a published author who has written like essays and poems about Rocky. Like, that's his shit. Good. So I love to hear what people have to say about that, because I tend to just kind of be in the camp of like, yeah, like, oh, lights, yep, snow, good. Caroling Mogwai, yes. He's Gizmo is a Christmas present. I make the most rudimentary arguments for whether or not something is a Christmas movie that I often find myself painted into a corner. That's always one where I'm willing to be like, okay, sure, you're right, and that's cool. This is one where I just kind of do that. I lean heavily into this one being a Christmas movie, and the aesthetic is such a big part of it. And so now, knowing I was going into this podcast and kind of realizing I needed to have more to it than that, that is when I started to kind of build my case based on the Mrs. Deagle Judge Reinhold thing. And so you've got Billy's dad trying to get home to his family in time for Christmas. He's out there trying to do the right thing and provide for his family. And now he's stuck out in the cold, and he's trying to get home. So, there we go. Trying to get home. Christmas. Check. Right. You've got this one guy. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh,
I know that's Thanksgiving,
but oh my God, just such a movie that, and I know it gets plenty of credit, but that's honestly a movie that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles can never get enough credit for me. No. And so then you've got Billy, who's he's working a job he hates, but he's still trying to hang on to the fact that what he has at home is what's more important, right? So then like I said, then you've got your Cratchit angle. You've got Deagle coming in and being your Ebenezer Scrooge and going beyond, I'm just going to ruin your Christmas. This bitch wants to kill his dog because his dog broke a snowman. This woman is evil. Gremlins, they're intrusive thoughts and they kill some people, but maybe it's kind of funny. Deagle is evil. And it's because she is this embodiment of that capitalist angle of Christmas, right? And you've got Judge Reinhold, the guy who's kind of mixed up about what it's all about, and he's all about the money and stuff like that, and he hasn't been visited by his three ghosts yet, but they're in his future. They're absolutely, it's going to be one of those things where Deagle's going to die, or does die, Gremlins 1.5 is the story of Judge Reinhold being visited by Deagle's ghost and having to realize where his view of Christmas went wrong. Right. So there's so much of that in there that like it's the B.
You do know that's Charles Dickens, right? Also not Mickey Mouse.
Oh, yeah. Wait,
Okay, all right.
not Kermit the Frog is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And so, but yes, that one I did know. So there's so much of this that I think just lends itself perfectly to going beyond that Christmas aesthetic that you can't help but say how Christmassy it is, even though Christmas isn't necessarily at the heart of this movie once you get outside of the fact that Gizmo is an early Christmas gift. But the lessons that everyone is learning as the story progresses are Christmassy. So I think that this is another one where for a very different reason than the mean one was Christmasity meter in the red. This one is absolutely burying the needle on Christmasity.
Yeah, perfect. And that leaves us really with just one thing left to do, which is to rate this movie. And we discussed it at the top of the show, or before the show started. So this is going to be new for everyone. They don't know. We know.
Right.
So it was not top of the show. I'm just a fucking liar. Trying to talk my way out of that one. I'm like, nah, it's not gonna happen. I lied. Sorry. So if you are new to the podcast, this might be something new to you. Our longtime listeners and viewers know this. We never rate movies using stars because it's kind of unfair to rate Gremlins with what did we do last week?
The mean one.
You know, they're two different movies. Even if they're about Christmas, they're two different movies. So it wouldn't be fair. So we always use a unique rating system. We use a different metric every single week. And so Daniel and I discussed this. And this week we are going to do, was it Rampaging Snowplows?
Yes. Rampaging Snowplows.
So Daniel, out of a possible 5 Rampaging Snowplows, how many Rampaging Snowplows do you give this?
So, for all of the reasons that we've discussed, I don't know that there's any way to make this movie better. I don't think that there's a tweak you can make, that there's something you could change where this movie is suddenly going to find a way to earn more Rampaging Snowplows. I think that it is a great creature feature. I think it is a great Christmas movie. I think it has just immense amount of heart. I think that you can watch it with your whole family. And if they're younger, you fast forward through the Phoebe Cates scene. And then, and it just stacks up to, this is a 5 out of 5 Rampaging Snowplows. I have absolutely nothing that I could take away even half of a snowplow from Gremlins.
I think that the only way that I can give this anything less than 5 is if I had remembered to take my stupid pills this morning. Like, it's just this movie it's perfect. It's Christmas.
Yeah.
It's horror. It's comedy. It's everything you want out of any movie. Because if your movie doesn't have a little bit of horror in it, it's less than what it should be.
Right.
And if it doesn't have a little bit of comedy in it, it's also less than it should be. Because those two things exist in perfect balance in this movie. Much the same way that it does in like a Return of the Living Dead. You know?
Right.
So and then you throw Christmas in the mix, and the fact that Christmas actually is important to the story, that thematically it plays into that. I mean, it is, I think we're talking about a perfect Christmas movie here.
Yeah. Agreed.
So
there you have
so there you go.
We are at a solid 5 out of 5 consensus Rampaging Snowplows for Gremlins. This is one, if you're watching us now and you still haven't seen Gremlins, this is what we got Andy chiming in here, says Ahoy Acton selling smokeless ashtrays. You're right, it has everything. And so if you're watching this and you've not seen Gremlins, add this to, you've got, if you're watching live, you've got 6 days left till Christmas. Get it tossed in there before it's all said and done. We promise you will not regret it. And so that's it. That's it for this episode. Now, if you were watching last week, I did say it might be our last one, but we have worked out not only doing this week, but we will be back one more time in 2023. And so, but also on an altered schedule. So if you're one of the people who watch us live, we will be back on the 29th, which is Friday of next week. So we're altering, we're working around our Christmas schedules, but we're doing it for y'all because we just kept missing so much and we've got the time now. So we want to make it happen. So make sure you head to shiverpod.com where you can find links to all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as the YouTube channel where you can watch us live, usually every Wednesday, but right now, just kind of whenever we go live. If you follow us on those social media outlets, you'll get the announcement once we decide what movie we will be watching next week. And you'll also get some funny memes and some things like that I like to throw up there. Instagram is the one where we're most active. If you have an idea of one we should do and you're watching us live now, I will tell you, we haven't officially decided what movie we're doing next week. Hit us up the DMs, or you can always email us at shiverpod@gmail.com.
Absolutely. I think that's it.
I think it's it. I think we got it.
Yeah, I think that's it. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, Fright